Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. It's our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some and or a lot of money on the internet. I'm your host, Bchek. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary, and we're going to get into everything that's been happening over the weekend in the NFT and crypto markets. But before we do that, just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice. We don't know anything for sure. And so therefore, please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Monday. It is the 29th of April, almost May, almost the time we're going to sell and go away for summer, if I'm not mistaken. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Doing quite well. Had a lovely weekend. Very much enjoy that the Blast Season 2 gold is starting to go out. Various protocols have been, or Season 1, but second gold distribution, to be more precise. Various protocols have been sending that out. I finally managed to break into the top 400. So very, very happy with myself.
Ooh, very, very nice. Top 400 of what?
In terms of the overall gold I was able to collect so far.
Very, very nice. Yeah, you can actually check the Blast leaderboard. People might not know this. You can check the Blast leaderboard as part of the dashboard, right? But one of the things I was wondering, I don't know if you know, Legendary, when you check that leaderboard, is that like points plus gold adjusted? Is it just for gold? Like, how do you know
There's
where
two
you are on
separate
the leaderboard?
leaderboards. You can rank either by points collected or you can rank by the amount of gold collected.
Or and both? So
No,
like,
I don't think there's a cumulative option.
oh damn. Wouldn't that be the best one?
Yeah, but I think the gold conversion or the gold to points ratio is
It's
like
not
not
guaranteed.
pegged.
Yeah.
So I think that would change all the time. For that reason, maybe they didn't want to provide a accumulated one.
Interesting. Okay. I need to check that then, because I thought I was looking at a cumulative one when I was having a look. But maybe that's not possible. That is interesting stuff. For the people who are watching in on YouTube and actually who are listening in as well, we hopefully will be able to hear your contributions today, because I am back home in London. It is good to be back, though. If you are watching on YouTube, you may see had a little bit of a, how do we describe this, Legendary? A mishap, an equipment mishap, where not quite, I don't know, it's not quite right, is it?
Well, you're going for this like more artsy camera angle. Let's call it like that.
It's a creative camera angle, that's one way to put it. It's also a terrible camera angle, if I'm being completely honest, but that is what we have to do. But hopefully, if you want to contribute today, we should be able to hear you, because we've got proper internet and I'm back home and things are working, should be working well. So look forward to having a discussion on everything as usual. But what we're going to do first, as always, is get you up to speed with everything that's been happening in the market. We're going to hit the snapshot. As always, it's pinned up top. If you do find it brings you some value today, please do give it a like. I'm going to share it for the people watching in, and I'll read it out for the people listening in. Let's go. Starting with some price action. We've got Bitcoin at 62.3K, down a couple of percent. ETH at 3.2K, down 4%. Solana down 5% at $134. In terms of the headlines, number one, by far and away for me, I think, Eigen Layer airdrop rumors for this week, as cryptic tweets emerge on $15 billion TVL protocol. CC2 Ventures tweeted this. They said, unless you live under a rock, you likely notice that the Vitalik coin, i.e. ETH, is currently outperforming everything. This was yesterday, whilst taking a beating for 1 year straight. What does that entail? It entails that somebody knows something, because who else is going to pump an asset worth $400 billion seemingly out of nowhere? My bet is on Eigen Layer. So we're going to talk about that. If you don't know what Eigen Layer is, we'll touch on it briefly, as well as discuss why we think that airdrop might be coming and some implications for that. Number two, Friendtech prepares Friend launch for this week. It appears to be trading on the pre-market for $4.30 with $4 million volume. We speak a lot about how these pre-markets are not to be trusted in general because the volume is so low. The volume here is a little bit higher. I don't know if we want to trust that. We'll talk about that in a bit. And finally, Hong Kong Bitcoin ETF launches today to Asian market larger than the US and the EU combined. Want to discuss some of that. consider some of the implications if we have time to. Getting into some floor prices, we've got CryptoPunks at 36.9 ETH, Bored Apes at 15.2, Mutants at 2.7, down a few percent, DGods at 1.7, Captains at 3.2, Azuki's at 4.6, up 8%. Penguins at 11.4, down 5%. Mad Lads still beneath 100 Sol at 95. And the Nouns winning bid was at 8.7 ETH. Legendary, that is the price action. Those are the headlines. Anything catching your attention before we get into a bigger discussion today and hit the headlines?
Yeah, absolutely. If I have a look at the Mintify heat map, I do like to see Azuki's being up 8%. I also find it noteworthy that Electric Sheep are down 12%. Electric Sheep being that NFT that is associated with Altiverse and the Altiverse Mint, respectively. The Altiverse deposit phase for the gold and silver chips will start right after the show. So exactly when we are closing today, their 48-hour deposit phase is starting. And quite curious to see how this one is playing out, because I do think that there is quite a lot of demand for it.
Interesting. So I'm just looking, the Mintify website has all the like upcoming mints as well. So it's this one, Altiverse Gold Chip.
Exactly. There's going to be both gold and silver chips.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting to see. You were right. I was kind of surprised with Azuki as well. I don't know where that kind of 8% increase came from. Any feeling as to what that's coming from? Everything else seemed to be either down or flat. Any specific thoughts there?
Not a specific thought, but just when we had that pump last week, I felt like Azuki's weren't pumping as hard as everything else. So maybe they're catching up with a bit of a lag, but I don't have any specific hypothesis for that move.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know either. To be honest, sometimes the market just trades so randomly. And one of the things I always speak about with Mockaverse, for example, is how it just will go up 10% one day, go down 10% another day. Again, it's up 9% today, above 4 ETH. The pre-sale for Mockaverse is like still ongoing. So I mean, despite holding mockers and needing to try to participate, I don't actually know what the implications are. I assume once people have made their buy-ins, there's going to be a huge sell-off because you won't need the NFT, because the NFT gets a bunch of airdrops as well. So I suspect once that comes in, then there will be a sell-off. But I would have thought that anyone who wants to buy now has already bought. So I don't really know why it's still like down 10%, up 10%, down 10%. So I'm a bit confused there myself. But looking at anything else, Legendary, any other reflections on the market in general before I get into one particular point of discussion for today?
Yeah, it's something that we've been touching on for quite a while. Exactly what you just said with Mockaverse, those like 10% swings that you have with that collection, that you have with many other collections. I think that's something that is tradable. Like that kind of swing trading with a small portion size can definitely work. Is that something you are doing or you were thinking about doing, or do you just simply lack the time to be tracking that on top of everything else and try to swing trade certain JPEGs?
It's a good question. I agree with you that it's tradable. Although I would also note that sometimes the collections which have like the biggest swings also have the ones that are routinely up and down also have like a 5% royalty, because Mockaverse is one of those collections where that royalty is enforced. So it's not as simple as, okay, I've got 10% to play with here. They like that will get eaten into by the royalty. So I'd note that. But more generally, I would say that I'm not looking to trade the market in that way. Partly because I don't have the time, partly because it's a little bit just too erratic for me. It's just very, very erratic. And yeah, especially when you don't know the news cycle. We've spoken about this with respect to airdrops. People are like really speculating on like a particular thing, making assumptions of information that they just have no idea on. And then the information comes out and they get absolutely wrecked. And if you're making a particular play, this is one of my key thinkings actually when it comes to strategy. If you're making a play and you're profitable, and like my Mockverse play is already profitable. What did I buy? I bought like one at 1.3, maybe one at 1.5, one at 2.2. So those 3 are at 4 ETH now. So like I'm up. Would it be worth like is it worth me cutting into that lead to trade the 10% and then the details coming out for the airdrop and then suddenly the price pulls back and then I lose my advantage as well as maybe getting cut up in the trading. So I try not to leverage my wins necessarily. That's partly my thinking. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I agree. You definitely have, especially if you were an early holder, you have a bit of additional risk of might missing a specific snapshot or any other kind of activation. Then again, you have the information totem pole, which you also had mentioned before, right? You had certain collections run up on that potential move of Blur on Blast, and some people speculating. I think it was also Clemente from the morning show speculating on the fact that there might be an incentive set by Blast to wrap those JPEGs and move them. Now, whether that's the case or not, it doesn't really matter. But sometimes, if you don't have access to the early information and you're swing trading a collection for those 5 to 10% gains, obviously one bigger downswing can basically eliminate all of the profits that you've made previously. So there's definitely a lot of risk with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so dangerous in my opinion. So yeah, I tend to try to be a bit more conservative if you're already up in a bigger way, but that's just kind of risk management. There are other instances where I feel like going all in, not all in, but betting even doubling down, tripling down might be more helpful. So things like Blast, for example, I was a very, very early depositor. And since then, I've deposited more. Once you kind of get the lay of the land, feel a bit more comfortable that it's not that it exists, that you'll be able to get your money out, etc., etc. And then you kind of can double and triple down as well. So yeah, I guess it just depends on the particular circumstance. But one of the things I wanted to bring up today for kind of discussion before we hit the headlines was this tweet by OSF, because I think it struck a chord for people because of how people are feeling in the market at the moment. And it was kind of interesting because I've kind of noticed some of this feeling myself. I want to share it with you and all of the listeners today and see what you think, Legendary, because this is what he said. He said, it's funny how the timeline feels more upset when we fail to break out compared to a bear market, despite every coin being materially higher than it was a year ago. I'll tell you why, though. Pretty much everyone speculating in crypto is in it for one reason, money. And there is no other asset class that offers such an exponential returns, such that you can literally change your entire life. The thing is, the point we're at now, lots of people are up big, but maybe not big enough. And everyone probably has some ambition to change their life from a monetary angle. Quit your day job, buy a house, help family, buy an expensive car, or whatever it is. I'd say being able to quit your day job is the most meaningful one that resonates with people the most. So the thing is, in a bear market, that dream feels far away and you're like, whatever. But in this market, that dream gets much closer and you're perhaps just 2 or 3x away from it now, maybe more. And you just desperately want it to get there because if it crumbles now, you've got to wait another whole cycle to take that shot again. So basically, it's easy to say things like people are done for being upset now when BTC is above 60K after it was below 30K for a whole year. But that's not really the point. The point is you're so close to breaking into a certain level of financial freedom target you've set yourself, and you don't want that dream to end. I find that pretty interesting in the psychology of money and kind of like where we are in the cycle, Legendary. But want to throw to you first to first ask you, have you experienced any of this personally? Like kind of feeling that you're so close to something and almost putting yourself under more pressure than you would in a bear market and you're kind of less happy? And second, have you noticed that in other people too? Maybe finally, what are your thoughts to kind of manage these feelings and emotions?
Yeah, I've been nodding all along with that post because I do resonate with it quite a lot. Definitely in the camp of feeling more stressed now that I get closer and closer to my portfolio goals, and now that it becomes like really, really tangible to actually hit them. Whereas when you're like, I don't know, at the start of a cycle and you're not in that money range, you're like, another 2x is all I need and I'm set. When you have like that bigger multiplier that you're chasing, it doesn't seem as tangible. It doesn't seem as realistic style of a cycle. And you're like, yeah, you're aiming for, I don't know, a 50x, a 100x, a 30x, whatever it is, whatever that number is. It doesn't seem as achievable. But once you get into the territory where like one more double up and it's going to be good, it's going to be really, really good. Obviously, you start to feel way more stressed and to be more concerned with the market movements, despite obviously acknowledging that, as MOSF said, we are up 2x on BTC if you compare it to last year, but you don't want to lose the hope of that dream. And in terms of managing that emotions, I think what really helps to ground me is just to acknowledge that this is not the last cycle. I mean, yes, we talked on the show that cycles are changing and institutional money will smooth some of the volatility. But while that is true for the major cryptocurrencies, there's still so much speculation down the risk curve where you still can hit those insane multiples. So someone who's been in this space since like 2016, like, yeah, I've seen more than enough cycles to know that this is not the last. So despite being that close, even if I were not to make it in this cycle, I know that I have more than enough to make it to the next bear and have like an amazing pole position at the beginning of the next cycle. So that's from my perspective. Obviously, if someone isn't in that position yet, that's absolutely not helpful at all. But maybe that pressure of not, if this is your first or second cycle, of not having to make it in the first or second cycle might be very, very helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think it's funny that you say like, oh, maybe what you said is not helpful because maybe you're in a different position, right? But for some reason, I feel like everyone is feeling this. Like, no matter what your portfolio kind of position, it seems to be the case. I mean, OSF's written this and he's probably in a different position to all of us, right? Still feeling on some level that there's some goal to get to and he's just not quite there yet. And like, if he's noticing that kind of tangible kind of frustration either in himself or on the timeline that like, we're almost there to reach something, I think that's valid for what you just said. I think it resonates with me. And I think even if you are in your first or second cycle, seeing the amount of opportunity and seeing how much people are up already, wondering whether there's just enough for you to be able to kind of achieve that next goal, I actually think is kind of relevant to anyone in any circumstance. It's kind of my reflection here. Interesting. Any like, you spoke a little bit about managing the emotions of it and said kind of, okay, well, there's going to be a next cycle. Lots of people are kind of suggesting this, or there has been an argument that this is like the last cycle, the last big opportunity. Do you think that's, I mean, it sounds like you don't think that is the case and that gives you some peace in some way. Do you want to speak to that a bit more? I see Brad with his hand raised, would love to throw it to him.
Yeah, look, I think both is true. I think that might be the last cycle as we like traditionally have experienced it. If you look at it from the sole perspective of looking at BTC and looking at ETH, in a future world, we'll also have an ETH ETF stateside, obviously not including Hong Kong. But while that volatility might get smoothed out with institutional money coming in at scale and maybe retail also coming in over the next couple of years with ETF savings plans, et cetera, there's still going to be a lot more volatility if you look further down the risk curve, if you look at smaller niches, if you look at stuff like what is trending right now, whether that's deep in AI, gaming, crossover of all of those trends, meme coins. If you have enough risk appetite, even in a world where BTC and ETH price are stabilizing and are not at a realistic fear of like suddenly dumping 80%, again, I do still think that there's going to be outstanding plays to be made in crypto. So from that perspective, even if it's BTC's last cycle as we used to see them up to now, I do still think that the cyclical nature will remain with the smaller cryptocurrencies.
I definitely think that is true. One other reflection for me, which I find really, really helpful. I think you might think slightly different to me on this, Legendary, but maybe we'll tease it out in a second after we go to Bread. But like, one of the reflections I have is just to like remind myself that I actually really enjoy this. like one of the cool things that I think we've managed to create, and what I would encourage anyone else trying to create as well, is a legit business on the back of like being in the industry that we enjoy and that we want to spend the majority of our time in, which kind of takes the pressure off the trading. And then, like, look, I'm not saying it's gone completely, because I hold my hands up and say, like, I experienced many of the emotions that was expressed in that tweet, where yeah, I do feel a bit more pressure. And I'm, you know, especially with Blast, for example, I've thought it's a huge opportunity, and I identified that very early. And so in my head, as a trader, as a capital allocator, I have to hold myself accountable and be like, well, take advantage of the opportunity right here, right now, as it presents itself, because it won't be around forever. So I do put that pressure on myself. But having said that, because we've managed to build something else, you've been doing your own stuff as well. I've been doing maybe a bit more, even more on the media side. It's kind of like, okay, we just keep going. We've got this stuff going on. So that's just one of the reflections I have of like how to make it easier. I don't know if you want to come back on that, Legendary, before we go to bread.
Yeah, I'll come back on that quickly. I agree with you to the extent that if you think about a future bear market or whatever, you have that, like, say, that base income from whether it's advisory work, the media side of things, whether you're a content creator and have established a nice deal flow for you, that all set aside from the investment side of things. And I do think that this helps you to get some peace of mind, but also at the same time, it just creates additional pressure, but also in a good way, right? Because the day only has 24 hours, and there's like a certain amount of the day that we set aside to focus on the modern market and related activity to growing that show, so that you have to compress everything else and be more focused on that. But it's good to kind of like know that no matter what realistically happens, there's like no way where I would have to go anywhere close to getting a 9 to 5 job. Like, even if all my investments and everything go to shit and I have to pay everything that I have in stables, like, I'm more than fine with the modern market side of things to keep growing that and focus on that and find other ways to make everything back that I would have lost in that case, and still have that exposure to the space and not have to worry how to manage like a full-time Web2 job and have still enough time to find Web3 exposure. So that's helping a lot, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's go to Brad. Would love to bring his perspective into this conversation. Brad, you've been doing particularly well as kind of internet citizen, whether that's farming, various things, restaking, trading, friend tech, all of the above. What are your thoughts on the kind of pressure you put yourself on, that you put on yourself as you kind of work your way up the ladder in this space?
Yeah, so I got a comment and a question. The comment on that is just that, well, sorry, I got a little distracted there. So, yeah, comment and question. So the first comment is just around the this being the last cycle. I think the two segments you can split that up into is last cycle for basically no one that's willing or able to even say that it is the last cycle, right? If you're in this industry to the point where you're commenting on Twitter, you're holding Twitter spaces, all this stuff, you're sufficiently like exposed and like doing things, whether it's trading NFTs or doing restaking, all that stuff, that, like, yes, just exactly as Legendary said, swings are going to be there for the foreseeable future, like dozens of years. But if you are, your aunt and uncle just doing the ETF stuff, yeah, like maybe this is the last cycle, because you literally just have exposure to ETH or BTC through an ETF, and that volatility is not going to be there. So I totally agree with Legendary there. But the question was, and this is the Legendary because he said he's approaching like a double up from here, kind of gets him safe, is, and this is for you too, B-Check. Have you started entering the distortion field of money is not money, or the same numbers are not the same numbers anymore, right? Because like in the bear market, I was pretty strict on, set your numbers, insulate your life. Like, these things are what I need to like do the level up. And now I, instead of like getting close to those numbers, getting nervous, I'm not nervous because I see so many catalysts in the future. Like, it's honestly, roll it into Ethereum BTC and you got a 2x from here. Like, if you really want to just go mind numbing like progress from here, but like, I'm starting to see those numbers and go, well, maybe I can do the 3 or the 4 or the 5x from here, because, and this week's especially relevant for me because Rentech and Eigen Layer have literally been all I've farmed the last year and a half. So
Wow.
today I could be a millionaire or be broke as shit. So like, and I don't know what that's going to be. So, I'm just curious if the distortion has come for you guys.
Yeah, it's definitely the case. And I had a call on that topic with NFT stats, like in the position that I was asking Sam for advice on that, and was like talking about the specifics of my goal, et cetera, et cetera. And his point was there's like no point in setting a number from the perspective that once you reach it, there is a new number. And that distortion is definitely real, especially as you said it perfectly, right? It might be the last cycle for BTC and ETH, but at one point, ETH will very likely hit 10K. And if I think about ETH at 10K, I go both ways. On the one hand, I'm like, yeah, that's a 3x. What do I care about that? I'm like, no, well, hold on. Actually, if I'm reaching that portfolio goal and chilling on an ETH back that does a 3x, that is insane because that goes further than I have planned for. So this is one aspect of it. And the other one of what you just said, like, is money. Like, I still have a fucking hard time of matching both worlds of fiat money and ETH money. I still do all my math in ETH, whether it is like booking a flight, going on a spa trip, whatever. I still do it in ETH, and I know that's probably not as healthy to a certain extent because it does allow for a bit of a lifestyle creep in a sense. And I think you, Beachek, had a post on that when you talked about flying business for the first time on a mid or long haul with Emirates when you were on your way to Dubai and back. And I think you made the point in the comments, or was it someone else on Vitalik, that Vitalik is
Zeneca
said that Vitalik is taking 50% of his long haul flights still in economy to still feel kind of grounded. So you do start to have to think about how do you develop those mental models to still remain grounded. And what makes it, for me personally, even more difficult is if you have that whole aspect of your in real life friends and you can't really talk to them or to most of them about the numbers that we are like dealing with in this space, because they get to such an absurd amount. Like, I don't know, take something like my YOLO spinning. I spin on YOLO, I win 2.5 ETH, which is, we're not even talking about airdrops that go into 5 or 6 figures. Like, stay with that simple example, and you basically are looking at a gambling win of 8 or 9K, which can be like 2 or 3 months salaries for certain people in my peer group. And that's something that is so far away from what they're experiencing that you can't really talk about that. And that makes it even harder because you lack that common ground to unite those worlds and find like an approach where money is still money and merge those fiat and crypto worlds in your mental model.
Very, very interesting conversation. I had 2 points to make. I'm going to think if I can remember them properly. One of the points was around like how to deal with this stuff. And you kind of, Brad, you were asking about like numbers. I'm trying to take the numbers out of it. I'm trying to think of what do I think are the best plays to make and just make them. Like, so I don't know how much I'm going to make from Blast, for example, but I identified it as one of the best plays. So if I've identified it and run the probabilities on Blast, it's just like, well, I need to make as much as possible from that, because when I ran the probabilities, I thought that that was one of the best opportunities. Whatever I make from it will be great, so long as I execute on, the plan, which is I identified it and I thought that it was good. And, we've been speaking about restaking on this show for a long time as well. You just never know what that airdrop is going to look like, for example. You just don't know. So I try to not think about it in numbers, but just think, well, what are the 4 best things that potentially exist right now? And how can I make sure that I'm a part of it? Like, I think I've got this spreadsheet where I'm keeping a tab on the airdrops. And for the first time ever, this is like some history for us. Like in 2021, when I first came into the space, I didn't understand airdrops at all. And when me and Legendary met in Portugal at one of the conferences, he told me, he like explained airdrops to me. And how he was like hitting on all of them. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, if I'm going to be in this space, there's no way that I can't participate in this stuff. And for the first time this year, I think every single one, like, I've hit. But the point being, I just don't know the number that's going to come from it, but I want to make sure that I hit on the opportunities that arise. So I don't know if that answers your question, Brad. But those are some of my reflections on it, and definitely taking a longer term view where it's like, look, I actually really like this game and I treat it like sport. I've spoken about content as sport as well. Kalano, who's on stage with us, who I actually did an interview with, which hopefully it's actually sick. It's like really high quality in the studio and everything. Like, I was talking about content as sport, and like, I like this game. So for me, it's going to be about playing the game for a long time. That takes some of the edge off it. But yeah, of course, there's still a bit of a pressure to execute as soon as possible. But Brett, any reflections on our couple of answers and how you're thinking about it as someone who has got a seriously big week ahead for him then?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so I am going to try to stick to numbers, and I do intend to have kind of similar play that Legendary is going for, right? I want to ride this as comfortably as I can, pocket the most, and I very much enjoy this space. So I plan on stabling up and sitting through the bear, because I will be here and I am entirely convicted on this space. But I do know this stuff is cyclical, and I plan on scooping up as much as I can with as much patience as I can over the next 3 to 5 years. So like, that's my plan. And I had a little come to realization of these last through the bear, that just, I don't need a lot to be happy. And similar internet money, I have so much internet money, but basically nothing in my day life, and I'm totally happy with that. So lock in those two things. I really would help my day life with actual money, and then let the rest stay on the internet.
Yeah, I have actually come to a similar conclusion. I think about, like, how happy would I be if all of this money was in the bank account versus all this money being on the internet, allowing you to do these fun stuff. And like, I kind of come to the same conclusion. Yes, you want to take care of a certain set of things, IRL, but I really like
insulate your life. Yep.
Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, insulate your life. I would like know what it would take to just coast with your current happiness for 2 years, lock in that number, and let the rest play on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I think we see it. Interesting to hear other people's perspectives. We want to get to the headlines in a minute. We've got like one of the biggest potential airdrops coming, but I want to give Tiro a chance to chime in. Your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, my friend. Let's put a bow on this topic before we hit the headlines, Tiro.
Sure. Yeah. Good morning, Modern Market fam. So my point is, everyone has to look at their time horizon on their investment strategy. Obviously, some people are here in this space for quick pumps and dumps, or looking to like 5-10x and get out. Like you guys are saying, like, I have a longer term horizon. I believe this space and the protocols that are being put out, the technology is what is going to be on the forefront of changing the world. So
sure.
It's for me, like, I hit a nice 8x on OG Peppy coin, and I'm sitting here right now at 8x, and I'm like, well, should I like pull it out and just put it in BTC, ETH, Solana in the majors and just coast, or am I going to use the information and knowledge that I'm learning every single day in this space, learning about Eigen Layer, learning about the new coins, protocols, technologies that are coming out, AI plays and the such. You have to understand where your money you wanted parked, and what you're trying to achieve as far as success. If you don't have goals, I don't know what you're doing in this space, because it's hard to benchmark where you're going to be and where you want to go if you don't have that down.
Makes sense, man. As you say, there's you always got to grapple with that decision ultimately when you're up in a big way. So hopefully that conversation that we've had has been helpful to just kind of get the lay of the land, maybe deal with some of the internal frustration that people might be feeling, where everyone seems so convinced that we need to go higher, like right here, right now, and the market's not going to do it until people are a little bit less convinced, perhaps. So I hope that conversation was helpful. Thought it would be interesting to have that out loud. But we do want to get into the main headlines for today. When there's no other place to start apart from the place of the potential biggest airdrop in crypto history. I'm going to set up this week for you because it seems to be a variety of things on. And then maybe we'd love to hear from Legendary and Bread because I think they probably know even more than me, despite me also being significant, being a big week for me too on some level. So this week we've got a ton of airdrops coming. This tweet from CC2 Ventures, which I'm sharing for the people watching in, should be helpful. We've got Friendtech today, I think. Well, that's what he's written anyway, though I'd need to confirm that. Friendtech is potentially launching today. Number 2, Kamino tomorrow, which seems to have been forgotten about because they kept doing those announcements of an announcement of an announcement. But here we go. That's coming around this week as well. That's on Solana, of course. Number 3, Renzo, which is an LRT, also known as Eigen Layer Beta. They went entirely linear and excluded everyone that had less than 360 points. So that should be very good for larger depositors then, if you were participating in Renzo. And number 4, the mystery airdrop. Unless you live under a rock, you likely noticed the Vitalik coin is currently outperforming while after taking a beating for 1 year straight. What does it entail? You might have seen over the weekend, ETH went up like 4%. Everything else was flat. It entails that somebody knows something, because who else is going to pump an asset worth $400 billion seemingly out of nowhere? There are a couple of tweets that people picked up on. This one by Blur Crypto, sharing the tweets from Bankless. Bankless is David and Sassel, who runs the Daily Gwei ETH podcast. Both of them saying, "Oh, there's going to be a big week next week. going to be a big week for Ethereum. Study it." These kind of cryptic, bullish tweets that people love to see. Kobe actually responded to the first one and said, I want to find the tweet so I don't say it wrong. Is it here? I don't know. Kobe responded to say, like, I think both of these people are advisors to Eigen Layer, so I think it will probably be Eigen Layer. So that's just like some of the context. Eigen Layer now has more than 15 billion restaked in there. So clearly a very, very big protocol. I'm going to stop there. That's the kind of background. Legendary, what are your thoughts on this? Is it the Eigen Layer airdrop coming? Is it ZK Sync instead? What's the significance of this? Then we want to go to Bread as well.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think we'll see which one it will be. Obviously, the Eigen Layer rumors are getting thicker and thicker, but we will have ZK Sync coming up too. There's also rumors that Layer 0 is probably looking at doing it within the next 60 days, which would kind of match exactly that hypothesis with finding a TG exit before the summer months, the quieter summer months begin. So that would make a lot of sense. But in either case, I think that rapid succession of big airdrops that we will see this week and the coming weeks, I think Tyler also pointed out that we have the Drift airdrop today as well, will definitely create a lot of euphoria. And also then we still have Blast end of May. So that's probably going to be like a very intense 1 to 2 months on the airdrop side of things. If you've been farming those like CC or like Bread for a long time and you're now like waiting to see what that turns out to be, like I know the emotional stress of that. Like I only consider a win once it is landed in my wallet and I can finally convert that. Like all the math before that is beautiful and fun and enjoyable, but also like just drives you fucking mental if you keep doing that over and over and over. So I do try to kind of take a bit of a step back and just wait for them to happen and then only think about the profits that have been made by those. And a good friend of mine is in the top 150 in terms of points on Eigen Layer. And he's like, nah, he's stopped doing any kind of moon math. And his baseline assumption is there's not going to be an Eigen Layer token ever. So that he mentally establishes the worst case for him. And whatever happens, obviously, will be way better than that. And that's like his way of dealing with it and like kind of keeping his mental health at a good high.
That's so funny. And to be fair and to be clear, if you ask about a token in the Eigen Layer Discord, they will only ever say there is no token. There is no token. There is no token. There is no token. So all of this is still speculation even now. I'm just sharing on the screen another tweet from Blur Crypto sharing an interesting comparison where after the tweet from David from Bankless, EtherFi, which is obviously a LRT, which kind of takes your funds in and deposits them to Eigen Layer for you, pumped really aggressively. I think it was at about $3.4, went up as high as 4.5 immediately after. He tweeted, "This is exactly what I mean. Lol. Surely no one also knew this information longed EtherFi yesterday." Kind of suggesting, well, the next tweet suggested, "See, in crypto, we don't call that insider info, but rather alpha," which I think is probably how most people see this type of stuff sometimes. Want to go to Bread here, who I know has been looking at Eigen Layer and Frentech actually for a long time. Maybe just on Eigen Layer first, Bread, like to what extent do you think this is Eigen Layer coming this week? And also like what have you been doing for it, and what are your expectations for it, whether it does come this week or later?
Yeah, it's honestly a little bit of a surprise for me because everyone I've talked to that has quote unquote inside information or been doing this for a long time is thinking, last half of the year, right? So like July, August-ish timeframe. So this would be earlier than my expectations, but I welcome it. The way I'm playing it, honestly, is because yes, you're seeing a lot of this EtherFi stuff and people pumping all of that. I think what people forget is a lot of these people that have these YT and PT positions right on Pendle playing this yield. So what I want to do is, if this does heat up, if people think that Eigen Layer drops this week, that means points potentially leave some of these LRTs because we don't know what the program is. So I may lock in some of the principal side on Pendle, because if Eigen points go away because the token is released, that means the yield of all of these other tokens are going to get cut in half, right? Because you've been dual farming those actual protocols, Renzo, EtherFi, Swell, plus Eigen Layer. But if those Eigen Layer points no longer accumulate, that means the YT positions are going to be worth less, which means that's probably going to tank a little bit. So I'm going to be watching the Pendle markets to see what the market thinks there, and then try to position myself. Maybe grab some. Like I saw yesterday, there was some guaranteed 60% APY on your ETH position. So I would cruise with that heading into the ETF approval this year. So maybe grab a few of those.
Interesting. Very interesting stuff. Yeah, I have been reading more about the kind of Pendle stuff, and I believe it's been a very, very good position to hold. Do you want to just double tap on it for the people listening in? Like, what do you mean? Like, just explain how that works and why people might be exiting. Does that mean people would be exiting en masse out of all of Pendle? Also, do you expect the people who are in Eigen Layer and in Renzo and in EtherFi, like, do you think all of those people exit as well? Like, or do you think that people will think, okay, no, restaking is a good place to park my ETH. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I mean, the TLDR on what Pendle is. It's a DeFi application, and what they've done is they've productized the yield that you can receive from a token from the actual underlying token itself. So this entire farming period, I have a couple of threads on it the last 6 months. You have ETH, right? ETH has a base asset, it has its own value. But if you do fancy things with ETH, right, you give it to EtherFi, you lock it in Eigen Layer, you deposit it in a vault, whatever, it can earn yield, usually in the form of points, right? The last 6 months has been in the form of points. So what Pendle did is they split that into two products and they basically made it an AMM against itself. So you could either deposit on the underlying asset, which is Ethereum, or you could basically pay your Ethereum to buy all of the yield of everyone else that deposited just their Ethereum in this thing. So you either buy just the yield side of the product, or just the principal, just the Ethereum, and you get paid a heavy premium for that on both sides. So on one side, what I have been doing is I would take my one Ethereum, I would deposit it in Pendle, and I would buy the yield side of that pool, which means I'm giving up my Ethereum to buy a shit ton of points from everyone else. So my one Ethereum accumulates the points of, say, 10, 20, 30 Ethereum, because all the other side of that has been giving up all their points in order to get a high APY, which is basically just me paying them. So Pendle turned that into a product, and you see people go back and forth based on people giving bonus points or whatever for any particular product. So if the yield side of that goes away, again, Eigen Layer, right? If it's no longer a point thing you can farm, then that means the yield side is worth less, which means you're going to see some sloshing around in that pool. So if people are caught off sides with that, and they're still thinking that Eigen Layer is going to accumulate for the next 3-4 months, whatever, and they're paying a premium on that for the yield side, that means the people on the principal side, just the pure Ethereum, they're getting paid a really high APY just to hold Ethereum by those people that are unknowingly giving up yield that they think will be Eigen Layer, but will go away maybe potentially this week. Like that's what I'm trying to watch.
Interesting. That's really, really interesting. And I guess the intention for the people who are giving up their Ethereum to try to get the yield is that even in a worst case scenario, correct me if I'm wrong, even in a worst case scenario where, okay, Eigen Layer drops sooner rather than later, and that those kind of points are kind of no more, if you've been in that position for a long time, you've accumulated so many points that should outweigh the amount of ETH that you initially deposited. Is that fair?
Exactly. Yeah. Like there's several examples of people, and you could do it in size too, right? There's tens, hundreds of millions of dollars flowing through this. So you could get up to, a couple hundred ETH and do all points. And in the course of 30 days, people did it before the EtherFi drop. In the course of 30 days, earn 200% on your entire ETH position in point value on Airdrop. Like it accumulates rapidly because of all the stacking you can do.
Interesting. Very, very interesting product. Thanks for explaining it, Brad. What we're going to do is we're going to hit the Web3 roundup to get you up to speed with everything else going on in the space in the last 24 hours, 48 hours. And then we're going to come back to one of the final headlines, legendary. Maybe we'll do Frentech actually, or we'll hit one of the other ones. Let's see. We'll decide that in just a second. But as always, the Web3 roundup comes from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. Let's get into it. Number one, the first rune is listed on leading exchange as RuneCoin goes with OKX. Number two, Build on Bitcoin L2 announces mainnet launch on May the 1st. Interestingly, the way they describe this is what was the exact wording? It was something to do with like connecting Bitcoin and Ethereum rather than this being a pure kind of Bitcoin L2. Watching that space very closely, think it's very interesting. Next, Lucanet suggests Lil Pudgies may have a Solana bridge soon. Thought that was kind of interesting to hear. Everyone just wants to bridge around. Number four, NFT market cools off after last week's gains, but Mochaverse and Azuki up 8% each in the last 24 hours. We touched on that towards the top of the show. OSF attracts 563 ETH of TVL for his pack wrecked mint, which can be refunded after 28 days. This is the protocol called Blaster, where you can create an NFT mint and the funds go into one place. And if you don't want, after 28 days or something, you can ask for a refund if you so wish. Interesting prospect. A lot of people are doing it to farm blast gold at the moment. Next, Promethean's ordinals crash from 0.09 BTC to 0.02 after the snapshot is taken for decentralized rune. So this is the rune that will drop from the Promethean's former still the Cyberkongs team. And finally, Andrew Tate tweets that there's no other option to BTC. I thought that was relevant. Someone noteworthy talking about Bitcoin. That's it from the Web3 roundup. We've got 6 minutes left, legendary, to touch on something else from the headlines or go in a different direction. We've spoke about Eigen Layer. We've got Frentech. We've got the Hong Kong Bitcoin ETF today. What direction do you want to take this in?
I think there's not a lot to say about the Hong Kong Bitcoin and ETH ETF, which we haven't already talked about. I think it'll be interesting to watch it over the next coming days, weeks, and months. And since we've been having that airdrop discussion, maybe let's use the last minutes and talk a bit about Frentech, also since we have Brett with us.
Sounds good. I mean, I've reported, Brett, that the price on the pre-market is at $4.30 with $4 million volume. We've also reported on the show previously that there's not a lot of volume on these pre-markets, and they, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 times out of 10 can't be trusted for reasonable valuations to rely on. What are your thoughts on the pre-market price? What are your hopes and expectations for Frentech?
I think this situation is the perfect encapsulation of our space, because I have to. So my girl has no familiarity with crypto, and trying to get her like accustomed to what we're talking about. And I have to tell her that based on the amount of points that I have, these magic numbers that I got trading my friends the last year and a half, I'm seeing dollars that will range from 0 to literally I will be multimillionaire today. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know the details of this, but that's the range of outcomes for today for me. But yeah, that's because like literally we don't know. Register hasn't told anyone anything. So, we have the Renzo FUD because of a pie chart and all this shit. No one literally knows anything other than there was a screenshot that had a dollar figure of friend on it a week or two ago. We don't know when it's going to drop. We don't know if there's an unlock. We don't know if the 100% community is actually real. We don't know anything. So yeah, Godspeed. I've seen up to $30 a point from people trying to do like, this is the only SocialFi exposure you can get if it's 100% community to us. Like, who knows, man? We're just kind of white knuckling it from here.
That's so funny. Okay, so if that is the case, which to be fair is where I thought we were at, what do you think, like, what can we attribute to all of this pre-market whales market activity to? Like, if there's $4 million been traded at different prices, but the price right now is $4.30 for a point, and there's $4 million of volume, like, what can we attribute that to, in your opinion? How are you looking at that kind of pre-market volume?
I mean, to be honest, I don't think whales market's very good because of the double collateralization that is needed for it. It's just not a very efficient market, and which is natural because it's points, whatever. But I just think that it's not appealing to the bulk of the market to get a true price there. Plus, it always is low enough liquid that like there's some manipulation there. So I think the best guess we can have is trying to get comps in the industry. Like the bullish case is, if you believe in SocialFi, if you think VCs believe in SocialFi, and you think Racer's fucked up in the head enough to do 100% community unlock, which, he is kind of crazy, so maybe. So like you have to say that's possible, but then it can go the total other direction where he's kind of weird and unpredictable. So it could be 100% unlocked over 65 years. Like we don't know what's going on. So like he clearly doesn't like VCs, right? He constantly throws jabs at Farcaster, Base, just VCs in general through his private Twitter. He said 100% community unlocked. Whether we can believe him or not, if it's TGE or if it's unlocked over a couple of years, we don't know. But it's hard to say with those markets because I think they're really inefficient due to the double collateralization required.
Interesting. What do you see the reason for that volume then? So yes, okay, it's inefficient, and that might actually hinder the activity there, but there's still been $4 million of volume. So is that like pure speculation? Is it insiders buying into someone who does know the details? Because if I didn't know any details, I mean, maybe this is just me, but if I knew no details, then I'm not buying I'm not buying the points because I don't know the details. Maybe other people have a different view and want to speculate, or alternatively, they have inside information. Do you have a particular view on that?
Yeah, I mean, there is, because of the double collateralization, there is some gamemanship that goes on there, right? Like, because if I'm a seller and I commit to doing that and then I renege on that, then someone else, the person that opts to buy that stuff, they get a free 100% on their trade, right? So if I wouldn't know Frentech exposure, because I think it's fucking crazy, but I think that the person that is selling their points is doing it cheaply because they have to put up their collateral, I can agree to that, lock in that trade. And if that person reneges on me, I get their points or their collateral, right? So like there is just like a pure, not even Frentech specific like valuation trade that can go on there. But yeah, like the whole reason for the range of the prices is because it's 100% community, quote unquote, right? So people are thinking that VCs are going through there. I've heard some people have rumors that some of the bigger civil farmers on Frentech are actually, insiders that game the system because that's why they were able to give up their allocation because they just farm like this actual system within, and that's why they weren't nerfed. So yeah, like there's a whole range of possibilities. It's literally just Racer doesn't give any information, so that it's so hard to speculate on really anything that I just have to attest it to just crazy crypto behavior.
Fair enough. I think it was really helpful to have those variety of options kind of articulated, because I don't know if we've had them all discussed in one place before. So appreciate that, Brad. We're drawing to the close of the show today. Legendary, any final reflection from you, either on Frentech, which we just touched on, or the kind of general airdrop landscape as we are getting into May now shortly?
Yeah, I think it's one point that I've been making a couple of times, and with everything that Brett just said, it makes so much more. It makes sense again, namely that the more intransparent some of those things are, the bigger the potential opportunity is, because some people like to keep out when they cannot pinpoint an exact return on their ETH, and like do a bit of moon math and know, okay, 12% is going to be airdrop. This is the allocation. Top 10 claimers will have a staked airdrop, etc., etc. The more intransparency there is, the juicier the opportunity sometimes can be, because obviously it then takes more risk appetite to farm it. Maybe not so much with an airdrop like Frentech that has such a high baseline speculation, but certainly with other airdrops where there is not really that same amount of hype that Frentech has.
Sounds good. I think that's an appropriate place to leave it for today. One thing I do think we should do just in the next few days is do a little recap of the ways we've hit in the last, well, during 2024 so far, but also just recap like what's still out in the market. So much stuff has come to the market so quickly. And I saw a tweet from CBB, the big farmer account, Blur Farmer, just being like, people had 2 years of the bear market and part of a bull market to drop their tokens, and they all decide to drop them in the same few days. Like, it's pretty outrageous. So like, to know what's still left on the list is probably a helpful exercise to do, and we're going to have to keep taking things off and readjusting. So we're going to keep this conversation going as we run the show on a day-to-day basis. So hope you enjoyed it. We'll continue that conversation. But that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to my co-host, Legendary, as always. Thank you to the main contributor today, Brad, for all of his knowledge on SocialFi and Eigen Layer restaking stuff, and our other speakers, Kalano, Oxy, and Tiro. And thank you so much for joining us in the audience. We will be back again tomorrow on Tuesday. So take care and have a good day. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.